How you all doing tonight? I'm Roy Kronecker. I am the chairman of the board of the International Game Fish Association, and I am so pleased to be here tonight, especially for this event. We've had now, I guess, 11. This is our 11th or 12th event in the Tommy Gifford Awards, one of my favorite events. There has been 53 captains that have been brought into the legendary captains group through this award. And tonight we are pleased to honor 6 new candidates that have been giving the award tonight. I'd like to say my friend and Jason Schratweiser is very sorry that he couldn't be here tonight. He called me this morning and he came down with a bug and he didn't want to frighten everybody. So he sends his sincere congratulations to the recipients this evening. And with that, I'm going to be short, and I'm going to ask Eric Combas, Director of IGFA Development, to come up and take the stage.
All right. Thank you, Roy. As Roy mentioned, we kind of lost count somewhere. This is the 2021 IGFA Tommy Gifford Awards, and y'all are looking at me going, wait a minute, it's 2022. We didn't do a time warp, but this is the makeup from last year's class, so we couldn't be happier to have everybody out here tonight and to see these people, all the honorees this evening. So COVID had different plans, but we're back. This is a huge room, so great crowd tonight. First time doing it in Palm Beach County, I should say, too. This is the first time we've done it during the Palm Beach International Boat Show. I'm a Palm Beach County native. This show's been going on 40 years. It absolutely blows my mind with the downtown and everything that's going on down here. And we thought this would be a great location. So I do want to thank Suki and the team here at the West Palm Beach Hilton for all the work they've done and all their hospitality and the food and the beverage and everything they've done tonight. So really appreciate it. We're going to throw up real quick on the screen, we're going to throw up a QR code here. If you scan that QR code, we're going to enter you to win a prize package that you saw out front, and more importantly, you'll become a digital member of the IGFA. I guarantee you a lot of people in the room tonight don't realize how much is going on at IGFA. Between the IGFA Great Marlin Race, our youth education programs, our Golden Dorado research program, soon to be our roosterfish program, we're doing a lot more than just world records. So please take a minute, scan the code, win some great stuff from Costa and Yeti, and become an IGFA digital member, and you're going to get all that great information. Tonight absolutely is never possible without sponsors. Sponsors are what makes tonight tick, and I want to take a minute to thank some of the sponsors here, so please give them a round of applause as I say these. We've got Northern Lights, Kit Purdy, Pier Fishing, my buddy Dave Bultice, the Greene family's here tonight, Tony and Diane Tillett, fellow North Carolinians, and our good buddy, IGFA trustee, Mr. Tim Choate in Wild Oceans. Thank you so much. We couldn't do it again without you. And we couldn't do it also without our board of trustees. And this event always gets a great turnout of our board. You've already met Roy, but also with us is the legendary over here, Terry Andrews. We've got Molly Fleming right over there next to him. Andy Mill, who's typically our MC, wanted to sit this one out, but thank you, Andy. And we've got a couple of emeriti. My good buddy Rob Kramer over here up front, former president. And over there, once again at the fun table, Dr. Guy Harvey. This event doesn't go off without staff. There's two in the room that I really want to thank. If you haven't had a chance to meet them, please say hello, but that's Kim Strong and Zach Bellapina. I don't know if they're in the room, but they were out front, but they're also the ones that have done the PowerPoint tonight. Most of the honorees, you've talked to them many times over the last few months when they've been doing their research, so I would like to give them a round. And then finally, none of this would be happening if it wasn't for the vision of Skip Smith and the legendary Captains and Crew Committee. Skip's also taking the evening off tonight. But going to do the heavy lifting in a minute will be Carl Anderson, the vice chairman. We've got Bobby Brown. Bart Garnsy's here tonight. Billy Harrison's here tonight. There he is, right over there. Unfortunately, Steve Lasley couldn't make it. He had a death in the family yesterday. Jack Merrow's here. Where are you, Jack? Mike Myatt, he's not here this evening, but sends his love. Charles Perry, CP, you're here tonight. Bouncer somewhere bouncing around. Bouncer Smith. Gary Stuve right over here. Lori Wright couldn't be here. Australia's a long airplane ride right now. And Peter B. Wright is here this evening. So that's our committee, and again, none of this would be possible without the hard work and dedication that they put in. So, okay, enough of me tonight. Let's get this evening started. It's going to be a little different. Like I said, Carl Anderson's going to come up here. He's going to captain the event this year. He's taking the place for Skip, and we're going to see a lot more Skip later on. But Carl is the vice chairman of the legendary Captains and Crew, and they do this whole process, and this is a year-round process. In this case, it's been multi-year. You guys know Captain Carl. He was born in Beach Haven, originally hails from there. He's been a journalist, a consultant, field tester, marketing director. This is why you put water under your podium. Product manager, fisherman, deckhand, and captain. He's worked for Marlin. He's worked for Saltwater Sportsman. He's been an IGFA representative since 2010. Sits on the IGFA, he's chair of the IGFA Rules Committee for the North American Council. And finally, like I said, he's vice chairman. Carl, come on up and let's give a big hand and kick this evening off.
Thanks, Eric, very much. It's, you look around this room, welcome to Palm Beach, and thank you, IGFA, for bringing us all together. Pretty special stuff. The Tommy Gifford Award that we're going to present tonight is a very prestigious and special thing, especially for us on the committee. We work very hard to matriculate people through, get the list going, get bios on people, and really try to recognize the best of the best. Tommy Gifford is considered one of the most innovative blue water anglers who ever lived, one of the greatest charter skippers to guide many major anglers to the game fish of the sea. He began his chartering career in Miami in 1920. Gifford was the first to use outriggers on the East Coast and the first to catch an Atlantic blue marlin using outriggers. Throughout his 50-year career, he developed an encyclopedic knowledge of game fish and techniques to catch them, and he served as guide and consultant to some of the most famous names in saltwater angling, including Van Camp and Heilner, Charlie Lehman, Michael Lerner, founder of IGFA, and Ernest Hemingway. Raymond Camp once wrote, "Big game angling has a brief history, but Tommy Gifford's name is sharply etched on every page. In the room this evening, we have several past recipients of this prestigious award. Please stand and be recognized when I call your name. Captain Bobby Brown. The one and only Captain Bart Guernsey. Miami's finest, Captain Billy Harrison. The West Coast Special, Mike the Bee Kurt. Thanks for coming all the way this way, Mike. Thanks, Pete. Steve Lastly, who unfortunately isn't here tonight, his mother passed away yesterday, so we're very sorry for Steve and wish him all the best this time. Captain Jack Morrow, Palm Beach legend. One of the best ever. Cappy. My old buddy and mentor, great teacher. We had a hell of a lot of fun tuna fishing in St. Thomas, Captain C.P. Charles Perry. And the one and only Temptress, Chip Schaefer. And this guy needs no introduction. This guy on a day of fishing could catch a litany of fish that God couldn't catch. Captain Bouncer Smith. And last but not least, there's only one, and we're glad of that. The Intimidator, Captain Gary Stuve. Tonight, we're here to honor this year's inductees, and it's a really special class, very diverse. One of the pioneers of canyon fishing, my buddy Captain Ben DeGutis. If you ever went through Key West or the Gulf and you stopped to get fuel, you saw Roger Greene, always on the dock, great helper, good guy. One of the West Coast elites who did a lot of stuff with some of the best in the business, Captain Pete Groesbeck. And a guy who started in Montauk, but ended up all the way in Seward, Alaska. And I got to fish with him back in the very early 90s. And I explained to Bark tonight, it was the last of the great killing grounds. We caught so many damn fish, I didn't know what was going on. Captain Andy Mezirow, Seward, Alaska. Great guy. And every circus needs a ringleader. And our circus is led by none other than a guy who has done it all. Changed the face of our industry with some of his exploits, Captain Skip Smith. And last but not least, there's a little place on the Outer Banks called Oregon Inlet, and if you want to get a damn good fisherman, you find somebody from Oregon Inlet. And some of the best to come down the line were trained there, and the Tillett name has floated across every ocean that we ever fished. Captain Tony Tillett. So this doesn't happen by accident. We actually have a criteria. And the criteria is that we formulate a plan, we get our names, and that the captain or crew member must have provided leadership in their trade and have earned the respect of their peers, thus making a meaningful contribution to the sport of recreational angling over an extended period of time. The nominee must demonstrate that he or she has espoused the ethical angling standards stated by the founders of the IGFA. Real important. To quote Skip, who quotes Mark Sosin, there is no greater honor than to be recognized by your peers. You can't buy it, you gotta earn it. Behind me right over here is the perpetual Tommy Gifford Award. That trophy lives in the IGFA, and everybody's name that's coming in tonight will be enshrined on that forever. Our first recipient tonight, got to start off by telling you a little bit about Ben DeGutis. Like most of us, Ben was bitten by the fishing bug at an early age. He started working on his father's charter boat out of Brielle, New Jersey. From there, moved on to other captains and broadened his skills and experience. He worked for famous Captain Red Stewart, Miami, and others. Canyon fishing up the East Coast today is as common as going to the grocery store. But no one had been there prior to the summer of 1959. That summer, there were 3 boats out of the coast of New Jersey that made the trip. It was a 43-foot wheeler called the Anthracite out of Beach Haven, New Jersey. There was a 43 Rybovich called the Amigo out of Atlantic City with Captain Whitey Fulton. And the Miss Magnus, a Hubert Johnson with a young Captain Ben DeGutis. Ben was working for Mr. Magnus, who had a music store selling pianos and organs. The boat was a custom-built Hubert Johnson and featured a piano in her salon so Mr. Magnus could play the piano while they were fishing. Ben later ran the Frisky Lady for former IGFA trustee, Captain Trustee Jack Willits. First was a 37 Rybovich, then a 45 Rybo. That was the last boat finished by Tommy Rybovich, and it was quite a boat. I got to run it for 6 years as the Briar Patch, and it was a great boat. Love that boat. They campaigned that boat up and down the coast from Nova Scotia to Florida, and one of their great catches was an IGFA record 386-pound swordfish on 30-pound line, baiting it on the surface. That record stood for a long time. This is the bill from that fish, caught by Jack, and it has Captain Ben DeGutis on there. Pretty cool. At any rate, at this time, I'd like to bring up my buddy, the Intimidator, Captain Steuv, von Steubing. Come on up.
The first time I met Ben DeGutis, I was 17 years old, getting ready to go back to Florida. I was in Atlantic City, getting ready back to Florida to start my senior year of high school, and I lucked into a job with a Miami legend, Captain Gene Wall. And it seemed like back then all the legends, Tommy Gifford, Gene and Eddie Wall, Red Stewart, they all seemed to come from Miami. Anyway, over comes Ben DeGutis, and I'd heard the name. His dad was a boat captain, and my dad was a boat captain, and this guy was talking to Gene, and he was 8 years older than me, and I thought he was going to be talking about fishing and stuff like that. I'm going to learn something maybe, and all he wanted to talk about was women. And anyway, I'd followed him, and he was going and catching. He was fishing in a canyon when none of us even knew what the hell a canyon was. We were fishing off of Jersey in the summer for bluefish and stuff, and he was fishing out in this canyon place. Anyway, the years went by, and he was working in Chub Key for Jack Willits on the Frisky Lady, and I had my first job over there running a boat for Jack Nicholas. And we got in after fishing one day, and for some reason, my boat was the place where everybody decided to hang out and hold court and talk about their day. And I'm sitting in a dinette, and another guy's sitting across from me, and Ben's over on the couch, and a couple other people, my mate, I can't remember who else was there, but Ben was there, and Nicholas comes down, and he parks right alongside of Jack. And by then we've all had a few beers, and all of a sudden, I don't know what the conversation was about, but Ben reaches around like he's going to put his arm around Jack, and he grabs him by the neck, and he starts shaking his head back and forth, and he said, I never did like you. And then he burst out laughing, only kidding. Nicholas's eyes got as big as pool balls, and he said, what the hell did I get into here? Through the years, though, we became better friends. He fished with me in a tournament one time as a mate, And the first thing I told the regular mate on the boat, I said, Salty, when this guy gets on the boat, he's the guy that puts on the gloves. You're the gaff man. And back then, this is like early 70s, you know, if it swam, it died. Everything went in the boat at a marlin tournament. And we got one up to the boat, about 3.5, and Ben's wired him up there. And just about the time Salty went to gaff, he kind of lunged towards the boat and jumped, and Ben grabbed him by the beak, and the next thing I know, he's coming over the covering boards, Newfie style, no door, on the deck. I said, okay. And I knew Ben was like pretty substantial. You always wanted to, you didn't want to piss Ben off, you know. Not that he had a temper, but if he ever did have one, you know. But he's been a good friend. We've probably fished on the beach more in the last 10 years than we've fished in the ocean. And he used to, before he moved up into the Panhandle, we used to, he'd fish off of Juneau. I'd be up around Hope Sound, Stewart area, and how do they bite down there, Ben? Oh, pretty good. You better get down here. I said, well, they're biting pretty good up here, too. So I was just checking to see. But we were always exchanging information. And like I said, I can't think of a better guy to get this award. A good all-around human being and a good friend. So I've been accused of talking too much, so I'm going to sign off, okay?
Oh, man. Gary, thanks. Ben, it's time. Come on up, man. Get your Tommy Gifford Award. Now, Ben, I know you're a man of few words.
Yeah.
But I'm going to coerce you into telling us a couple things about your career and what this means to you.
Oh, this means a whole lot, and I thank IGFA for it. It's super. I never ever dreamed I'd have a nice award like this. Anyway, what's a good thing? I started fishing with my dad.
Tell them.
Started fishing with my dad on a charter boat when I was a little kid. And then later on, I went on other charter boats. He always forgot to pay me. And, and after that, well, he had told me Red Stewart was a really fantastic fisherman, so I had my mind, as soon as I got old enough, I had to try to go to work for him, which I did. And we went tuna fishing in Bahamas and did pretty well over there, and a lot of fun. And the marlin fishing, first time, I think the first time I made a small trip with him, Bimini, and the first blue marlin I ever grabbed a leader wire on was tailed up. And I said, that's nothing. That's pretty easy. Next one was, oh my golly. I said, I think I like the other ones better. You know, so. And then, you know, I went up north and I got a job on my first real captain's job was the Magnus. And we fished the Hudson Canyon, the Wilmington Canyon, the Baltimore Canyon. And we caught some marlin when you're not supposed to catch them yet. And it kind of got things going out there. And after that, several boats. And then Jack Willits got the Little Frisky Lady. I guess I was about 29 years old at that time. And the first thing that the job was just to do his varnish work, and I did it. And I said, you know, you ever go fishing much? And at that time, he didn't do too much. And I talked him into going offshore, and he really liked it. That caught on real fast. And that went on for quite a number of years. We worked, you know, we fished Nantucket, Martha's Vineyard, and on up further, Gloucester, here and there. And then he took me to Australia to see how they did it over there, and that was a great trip. Caught one over 1,000. And he did catch that swordfish, 392 on 30, and it took him about 4 hours, so there was nothing real quick about it. And we had another bigger one on the next trip out, but we didn't get that one. He just finally settled down, couldn't get him up. And that about covers just a quick sort of rundown of what I've been doing in the past. Thank you.
All right, our next Tommy Gifford Award recipient, Roger Greene. Here to tell you a little more about Roger are his son Travis and daughter Tracy. Please welcome them up to the stage and tell us a little bit more about your dad.
You know, Dad died in 2009, and this has been a long time coming for us to participate in what we had hoped would happen. But back in the days when he was a yacht broker in New Orleans, he worked for Richard Bertram at the time. But I can tell you that the brokerage there was just a prop. It was just a little more than a front for the real operation that was taking place there. I mean, sure, there was a boat sold every now and then, but the real reason why that brokerage existed was to engage in the services of my father for running boats at tournaments, usually at the big game, New Orleans Big Game Fishing Club. So he had this sign on his desk, and I'd like to read to you what the sign says. It says, "The sea is not inherently dangerous, but it is mercilessly unforgiving of human carelessness." Now, I'm sure that most of you in this room have calculated the risk of what it takes to go to sea and decided that it's worth the risk to go pursue big game. But there's really no substitute for preparation, and that's what this sign's all about. I remember as a child that he would prepare his tackle meticulously, and he'd spend hours sitting there tying double line for IGFA compliant leaders. And I'd watch him and my mom, and he'd yell at my mom when she would not pull it tight the right way. But he was also meticulous when it came to coming home at night, being at the dock. He would test every drag with that spring scale. Everybody else was drinking beer and telling fish stories, and he was checking on the tackle for the next day. When I was younger, it seemed normal. You know, everybody else just would, you know, focus on having the fun elements of being there at the tournament, but he was all about preparation. So that's the one thing I would like you to take away from Roger's unique perspective in this space, is that preparation is critical to making sure that the big ones don't slip away. Now, I can't tell fish stories like my dad did, but there is one that I'd like to share. In July of 1972, Roger had some customers lined up to go fishing on a boat that he was going to try to sell them. But the weather was really bad, it was windy, and they canceled at the last minute. Now, he had signed up for two tournaments, the Grand Isle Tarpon Rodeo and the New Orleans Big Game Fishing Club tournament that were both happening that same weekend, and he wasn't going to let a good opportunity go to go fishing. And so he cobbled together a crew consisting of a ragtag group. He pulled my mother in, who happened to be 5 months pregnant with my sister and I. He grabbed my mother's sister, Jan, and her husband, Jerry. My mother's 15-year-old brother, Jeff, who's here with us in the room tonight, and he can verify this story is absolutely true. And he also brought along his father, my grandfather, who was getting up in age at the time. And he also had one seasoned hand, Tim Sebastian. And they decided to go out that weekend. You know, it's windy, it's rough. But about 10:30 a.m., they hooked up with a big blue. And so he throws Jerry in the fighting chair and says, "Just do what I tell you to do." So Jerry grabs the rod, sits in the fighting chair, and they managed in about 25 minutes to get the fish into the boat. But in the process, the fish starts throwing its head back and forth, throws the hooks, and one of the hooks gets embedded in Dad's knee. Now, you know, he wasn't going to let that slow him down. But at the same time, Jeff was at the ripe old age of 15, decides he's going to go and help out and slips through the tuna door and falls overboard. And of course, everybody had been telling them, you know, we got to get the boat, we got to get the fish in the boat, there's sharks, there's sharks. And so Jeff's freaking out. And so Tim managed to grab both the bill of the fish and apparently Jeff's hand, pull him back in the boat. They got the fish in the boat. Of course, at that point, there were no hooks in the fish, so it was, somebody had to hold onto the fish to get it on there. They landed the fish. They made way into both tournaments, won both tournaments with that fish. You never know what life is going to throw at you, so always be prepared for the worst. There's another principle that characterized the success, and it was innovation. Today, we revere innovation with technology leaders, but innovation is anything that we bring to life, anything that we dream through the culmination of taking risk and making measured improvements along the way. In 1977, Roger and Judy took a trip to Hawaii, and in the course of that trip, they noticed that these guys were fishing with plastic lures. Now, no one had thought of doing that at the time in the Gulf of Mexico, and so he spent a small fortune at the time. He bought $500 worth of plastic lures and some of the molds, brought them back with him to New Orleans and started fishing with them, and everybody made fun of him about it, of course. But in 27 days of fishing in that 1977 season, he caught 10 blue marlin, 9 white marlin, 2 sailfish, and 1 swordfish. And by the end of that season, of course, everybody in the club was trolling plastic. Now, some of you know that part of the story, but what you don't know is the amount of time that Roger and his brother Joel, who's here with us tonight as well. Joel, stand up for a moment because you deserve some recognition for this. I remember the two of them grabbing a hacksaw and going in the backyard and cutting the noses off of these, bullet-shaped lures that they'd brought back with them from Hawaii, and trying to figure out what shape ran best on which one of the wakes, and changing speeds, and doing all the different things, different color skirts. He's convinced that blue marlin are colorblind, but that they do see contrast. So there's a little tip for you if you haven't learned this one already, is fish with different colored heads and skirts, but I'll leave that one with you. He wrote all this stuff down. He kept a log of it, and so he kept that information as part of his experimentation to try to improve every time he went out. And when a big fish struck, then he knew that's the speed that you wanted to troll that lure at, and on where to put it on the riggers or on the flat line. I work in the tech industry, and we use the term fail fast to mean take a risk. Don't let the enemy be the perfect or the good. And the best innovators, they shrug off ridicule. So the second principle you can take away is innovation. One more principle that characterized the success was generosity. If you were willing to ask, he would offer whatever knowledge he had acquired. Even if you were fishing on a competing boat, he recognized that giving information away was the way to build the sport up. And he was committed to building the sport. He took that generosity to his service on the board of what used to be called the Gulf Coast Conservation Association, now the Coast Conservation Association. And, he killed a lot of redfish in his day, he and I both. But he wanted to make sure that those fisheries existed for future generations. Rarely have I ever met a fisherman who knew my dad, who didn't owe him some sort of a favor. One of those was a man named Henry Mouton, who repaid his favors in full by helping to make this recognition tonight possible. Henry couldn't be with us tonight because he has the best excuse ever. His daughter's being married this weekend. But I want to thank him on behalf of our family and for working with my mother and with some of you even in this room to submit for this award. When my father passed away in 2009, Henry was also instrumental in arranging transportation to a place called the Midnight Lump in the Gulf of Mexico. This is about 50 miles south of Grand Isle, and that's where he wanted his ashes left in accordance with his last wishes. It was there that he caught his largest fish, a 738-pound blue, and it's there where he wanted his final resting place to be among the other big blues. Finally, I would like to thank Captain Smith and the IGFA Legendary Captains and Crew Committee for the recognition of this Tommy Gifford Award. This is incredibly meaningful to my sister, my brother, and I, and our extended family who are here tonight. It's our great honor to share this evening with you all, and I hope you're inspired to prepare, be innovative, and be generous. Thank you, and have a great night.
That was a good one. Roger was a neat guy. Got the chance to meet him in Key West a few times, pulling into Oceanside and getting fuel, and always helpful. Very, very helpful guy. Our next recipient is Captain Pete Groesbeck. And tonight we have the guys to speak to him is Anthony Shea from Team Bad Company. If any of you have been paying any attention at all, you know this crew is up to some unbelievable stuff in our industry. And Kevin Harvey. Anthony, Kevin, you guys want to come up?
I didn't want to do this because I'm not going to be nice to him. I've been fishing with Pete since I was a little kid, actually. I was walking down the dock thinking to myself, who is this guy that's bigger than life? And over the years, he's just been such a great mentor, such a great teacher, very intense. And the guy just, from sun up to sundown, never, ever slows down. And I'll tell you, he's got a temper. Skip, right? And we scream at him, he screams back. I remember one time, he was leadering a fish during the Catalina tournament. We're in the hunt. We get the nice fish. We wanted to leader it and get the release points, and we're screaming at him, release it, Pete, and he's grabbing onto the leader. And this thing had a little swivel on it. And Steve's on the bridge screaming at him, keep your hands low! And here it comes, pop, straight into his chin. We had to take him to the ER afterwards. I have so many stories. And the last I'll leave you with, we nicknamed Pete because he loves his parts. 1 is okay, 2 is better, 10 is perfect. Thank you very much. Here's Kevin.
I've been fishing with Pete for, I think it's 6 or 7 years now. And that's really as long as I've been saltwater fishing. I was doing other things before that and fly fishing, things like that. And so Pete has really taught me a lot, pretty much everything that I know, which still isn't enough. What's amazing about Pete is not only his depth of knowledge and experience, but his intensity at everything that he does. There's nothing that Pete does half-ass, ever. And it's amazing. You know, I sometimes want to tell him to, you know, it's okay, relax, but Pete doesn't do relaxed. He's really going to do everything perfect all the time, whether it's boat work, fishing. And when we first met, I told him, I said, you know, I just want to fish for fun. I want to learn. I really love new experiences. And I don't really want to, I don't know if I want to do tournaments or something like that. And Pete said, that's okay. I've done enough of that. And so we just run all of our fun fishing trips like they're tournaments, I guess. That's, but my favorite Pete story is one night we were anchored off of Cabo. We were on the Jaime Bank, and we're chunking it's about 5 p.m. We're chunking. We heard there's some big yellowfin around, and we hook one and immediately realized it's a bigger fish than the gear that we were using, but we start fighting it. And then the other rod, we put bigger gear out, and we hooked that one too. And the first rod that's a little too light, we end up attaching it. This is all Pete's, you know, doing. We attach it to another spool, throw that rod over the side, start fighting it with the second rod. The first rod I'm still fighting. After about 2 hours, the double rig finally pulls the hook. And I've still got the heavy yellowfin on, and we keep fighting it into the dark. And we were anchored, so we couldn't really use the boat to fight the fish. And so I'm going around in this stand-up gear, and I literally went around the boat 10 times. And my back is giving out, and, you know, going up and down, trying to get out of the cockpit with this, you know, heavy load. And it's in the dark, and finally, the boat is, the fish is getting close to the boat, and Pete says, "Get the gaff!" And so, you know, somebody runs to get the gaff, and then, you know, finally the fish is close enough, and Pete gaffs the fish, and it's about a 300-pound yellowfin, and it immediately spins with the big nylon rope we had under the boat and gets tangled in the dark. So it's like 10 o'clock at night, we're in the middle of the ocean, and the 300-pound yellowfin is tangled under the boat, and so Pete says, "I'm gonna go get a snorkel!" And he runs into the boat, and he gets a snorkel, a mask and a snorkel, and as he's running back to the boat, he grabs a gaff and he dives into the water, and in the pitch dark, he swims up under the boat and gaffs that fish, and we got it in. So that's my Pete Groesbeck story.
Captain Pete Groesbeck, come on up here and receive your Tommy Gifford Award.
My biggest worry tonight was that I am glad that I get to go before Skip does. That was my biggest fear, is going after him. Probably would have walked out of the room, because this man was a lot more than everybody knows what he's done. But thank you for going after me. Appreciate it. That was really nice of you. Anyway, I want to thank the board and my family and friends in California, Mr. Kevin Hardy and his wife, and Anthony's here for Steve. And as everybody knows, Steve had a death in the family, but really what comes down to it, I actually paid him to stay away because I thought he would roast me up here. Seriously, he's got more stories on me than anybody does. And for me, my dad had a boat in the 50s in San Diego, and we grew up on the dock fishing perch like a lot of people do. And it's his fault I got in this business to begin with. And but everybody in this business has the passion. Everybody that's done it has the passion, and everybody still doing it has the passion. Without it, they'd probably sell insurance or something like that. Anyway, as I started out in San Diego doing that, and started on the party boats in San Diego, where you learn the ropes of really working hard, fishing hard, and learn the tricks of the trade. And then I fished commercial swordfish for quite a while, learned a lot about those, which helped later on in the rod and reel situation. And then I got into yachts, and probably everybody that's ever ran a boat in here is probably has always had a mentor that they can say, if you ask anybody, well, who's your mentor? And everybody can name it. There's a gentleman in Newport Beach I worked for 5 years on a yacht called the El Tigre, and a gentleman named Captain Kenny Dickerson. And this man went down to Cabo with him, and I got my license, and I kept working with him, and because I wanted to learn more, and the guy was phenomenal. And anybody, your mentors is huge, and he was definitely my mentor. And then I got lucky enough with Kenny and some other people to go down to Cabo in the early 70s, before the hotels and the marinas, and we anchored out had set our own moorings, and we did Mag Bay, but we didn't do a lot of Mag Bay. We did Mag Bay going through there because the fishermen saw it in Cabo. There's no reason to go to Mag. Cabo was like Mag is today. So we went through there, we never stayed because we didn't have to. And it was when I was in Cabo, I was on a boat, and I actually got to fish with Peter Bristow, and it was years before I even knew who he was. Just some crazy Aussie guy that thought I'd try to help out, but ended up he knew more than I did. So it was pretty good seeing Mr. Peter Wright down there. And in the mid '80s, I was lucky enough to be a part of a mothership operation that we built a 93-foot mothership up in Jones Goodell, and built a 33-foot game boat that went on the back of it, and we launched it it was late '84, I think November '84, and then we brought it down to San Diego and did some work on it, and we went down to Cabo, and then down to to the islands below there, Clipperton, Cocos Island, when you could fish there, which is pretty cool. Went into Panama and Costa Rica, and then we came up and did some more work, went over to Hawaii and French Polynesia and all that area. And it was interesting because back then they had a sat nav, and the satellites rotated around the Earth in orbit, and so you got shot every 3 to 6 hours if you're lucky. And otherwise you're standing by hoping you get a shot. And sometimes it was more than that. So you kind of, every time you hear a little beep, everybody would celebrate. And, but while I was, one trip we were down in Panama in Penis Bay, and ran into Jerry Dunaway. And Jerry came out in the boat and went through the boat, and you could see when he was on the boat that he wasn't saying too much, but his wheels were spinning. And you could tell it. And the owner of the boat at that time, Jim Jenks, he says, I think this guy might be pretty interested in this stuff, and the rest is history on that. It was pretty interesting. He got to come down and go on the boat when we were there. And then, of course, a lot of you know my history with Steve Lasley. He and I met in the 80s in Cabo and started fishing together. And we had to talk about different things, had the same thinking on a lot of different things that I couldn't explain to people. But his mind was about 5 times faster than mine. We would go fish these tournaments, and we'd make a move, and I'd have to sit there and think about the move, and he's already making the move before he thought of it. It's it was a great relationship. Anthony Shea was fortunate enough to put together a team Bad Company for a while that we just had a great time, had a lot of fun, and won some tournaments. And now I'm lucky enough to be with Mr. Harvey, and we have some boats spread out in different areas, and we're building another one, and we're still going here. So it's thanks the board and everybody here for coming. And like you said earlier, it's very special to always be recognized by your peers. Thank you very much.
Been reading about that guy for a long time. And that boat that he was talking about was the Ocean Pacific. And I'm glad to know that all those OP shorts I bought as a kid, bought a couple hooks. The next contestant on the Tommy Gifford Awards show is Captain Andy Mezirow. To introduce Andy, a good friend of ours at IGFA, Andy Levine, Vince Ward. Come on up. Wait, Charlie Levine. Not Andy, it's Andy Mesrow, Charlie Levine. He was my editor, Marlon. I should know his damn name. You always corrected me, now you can correct me.
Gotta watch out for you.
Yeah, buddy.
How's everybody doing? Yeah. All right. Bunch of savages. So I first met Andy Mesrow at the Fred Hall Fishing Show in Long Beach, California. I had known of Andy from various articles we'd published in some of the magazines I worked at. He was a New Yorker who ventured up to Alaska and quickly made himself a name as a top skipper. We had published a bunch of photos of him, and he was always hoisting these giant halibut and lingcod. And he's a pretty short guy, but he's very powerful. He'd always have a huge smile on his face. Andy and I both have a very warped, strange sense of humor, so we really hit it off. And we ended up grabbing dinner that night, and Andy introduced me to Roscoe's House of Chicken and Waffles, which if you're ever in Long Beach, Pete and those guys probably have been there. So needless to say, we kind of stuck out. We showed up in our fishing hoodies and whatever, and Andy was just like, hey, who cares? Let's go and have some fun. And we went to this little jazz club next door, and we hung out, and I pretty quickly realized that Andy's one of those guys who doesn't really let anything get in his way. At some point, I told Andy that I'd always dreamt of going up to Alaska to go fishing, and he invited me up. And it wasn't one of those half-hearted invites. He really meant it. Like all of you captains in this room, you know, Andy really enjoys showing off his fishery and introducing people to his home waters. And it was an incredible trip. We overnighted at a lodge you can only get to by boat, and we fished the famed waters of Montague Island. We laughed and cracked jokes, and the fishing was incredible. Andy is a natural storyteller, and he's got a lot of great stories, and he can make even the stuffiest guy crack a smile. But when it comes to fishing, Andy's all business. He has a complete and total understanding of all the factors involved. The currents, the weather, the migrations, the biomass, the bait, the boat, the tackle, the engines, the electronics, the local intel. Andy's got it dialed. So he gathers up all that information and he makes really smart decisions, and he'll put you on the fish and he won't stop until all the rods are bent. But Andy's legacy really goes beyond sport fishing. Andy's always mentoring someone. If he sees potential and drive in a young person, he'll help them out. He taught seamanship for many years. He's helped to develop many young men and women into very good captains. He's made me a better angler, which I appreciate. He's got sort of a football coach mentality. So when you're, you know, pinned to the rail with some giant halibut, he'll be right in your face, yelling at you and cracking jokes and whatever. Give you a lot of grief, but it's all done out of love. And I think Andy always wants to catch the fish more than anyone. You know, Andy also really cares about our fish stocks. When he told me that he was being appointed to the North Pacific Fishery Management Council, I was like, wow, that's awesome, Andy. Just don't punch anyone in the face and you'll be fine. And he's punched a couple guys, but he's doing all right. He's doing very good. But as many of you know, a position like that, it's the most valuable fishery in America. You have to read a lot of scientific papers. You've got to deal with all these stakeholders and meetings and travel. But like everything Andy does, he puts in the time and effort, and he makes sound decisions because that's just how he's wired. Andy's definitely a blue water fisherman, and at some point we got to talking about Australia, and that was another one of my dreams, to someday go to Australia and fish there. But I really didn't have the means to make it happen. And once again, Andy connected the dots for me. Andy booked a trip with Tim Richardson to fish for black marlin on the Great Barrier Reef, and he invited me along to shoot photos, and I was going to write an article. We hooked 3 fish in that coveted grander size range, and they were the most giant, beautiful fish I've ever seen in my life. We didn't get any of the granders to the boat, but we caught fish every day, and we would anchor up on the reef at night, and it was just a magical experience. As we were heading back to Cooktown at the end of the trip, the guys, Vince was there, the guys said, all right, Charlie, come on down off the bridge. You know, you can have a turn in the chair. So me, the freeloader, got to sit in the chair, and we raised a fish. And unfortunately, it faded off. No bite, so I thought that was that. But then another fish showed up, and I got my chance. We hooked a 650-pound black marlin on a lure, and with Tim on the wheel and me in the chair, we caught the fish in like 20 minutes or something. And it was and is the largest fish I've ever caught in my life, and I owe it all to Andy's invite. So after that trip, as we were checking into the hotel, the woman at the front desk looked at us, and she said, "Are you and your son here on holiday?" I was going to try to do it with an Aussie accent, but... So I started laughing really hard, and Andy put his arm around me, and he was like, "Yeah, son, tell her what a great trip we've had." But I was laughing too hard. I couldn't really say anything, so I'm going to say it now. Dad, you've been a great friend and teacher, and congratulations. This is a huge honor. You really deserve it, and I'm so happy for you.
Good evening. I'd like to congratulate all the other inductees for the Tommy Gifford Award and my good friend Andy Mezirow. I met Andy, it's been a long time. I didn't have gray hair back then. I was on a plane coming back from Seward, and somebody said, hey, well, you got to fish with this guy, Andy Mesrow. He's just the man. And so we booked a trip with my dad. My dad was probably 67 at that point. He's 93 now. And we went out with Andy, and he's just a monster on the fish. And I said, Andy, what are you doing? That's a bass rod. Oh, we get fish on these. On that bass reel? Oh, yeah, we get big fish. And there goes Andy putting on a clinic on light tackle, huge halibut, and it just happened all day. You know, Andy has a precarious way of thinking and transferring that to people. I got a chance to go out with Andy and took a lot of, it became the dad-son trip. So we take our dads with us, and you know, they were in the 70s, 80s, and Andy just kept putting them on 100-pound plus halibut on light tackle, and they just kept going and kept going. I said, are you tired? No, we're not tired. But Andy has a great way of conveying that knowledge base that he has and the mastery of light tackle, big fishing. Over the time, that transcended to the guys all canceled, and my daughter, who I think was probably 12 at that point in time, said, I want to go, Dad. Another friend said, hey, can I take my daughter? And it became the daddy-daughter trip. Well, Andy, I want to thank you, and Haley said to thank you and congratulations. She's 19 now, but Andy put her on her first IGFA record, and she continued on to get 5 more records, and has given her passion for the sport. You know, the trips with Andy became very special family trips, and every year I invite another 1 or 2 families to go with us. And you know, Andy has a great way of talking to kids and giving them this confidence. You know, you get in the water and the kids come out kind of quiet, a little shy, and once you start knocking down big fish on light tackle, they get this swagger. And the kids come off these trips with this swagger. And you know, Andy would convey that knowledge base that he has to the kids and give them an opportunity for greatness. So for those trips, for family and friends and the senior guys who kept pulling on fish so they couldn't go anymore, Andy, I say thank you and congratulations, and I couldn't say this honor could go to a better person, a better fisherman. You know, Andy's in Kona now, and I went out with him when he first got there on one of his trips, and he was just learning the water and learning the skill set. And you sit with him now, and he's taken the local methods and put the Mezirow twist on them and keeps improving them and taking the technology and everything else he's learned to kind of press the game up. So with that, I say congratulations, Andy. You deserve.
Well, thanks for the kind words from my friends. I appreciate it. And it's a huge honor to be selected for this award. I was struck by the legacy of greatness of the previous recipients. And I think that's what makes it so humbling to join them as part of the class of 2021. From my perspective, being chosen by your peers for an award is the highest form of honor that you can get in this business, and I am grateful for it. My path in the fishing industry has been unusual, as probably most people's have. I started off as a young boy fishing off the docks in New England, and I was thinking about what it was that really started my obsession with fishing. And the funny thing is that when I thought about that, I realized that as a young kid, I watched the Walker's Cay Chronicles on television, and watching Flip Pallet blend catching amazing fish with biology and local knowledge and exploration and camaraderie and humor really opened my eyes to what modern sport fishing could be like. In my early years in the industry, I worked in Montauk, where Carl was, and working there taught me about the business of fishing, the value of community, and the merits of a hard day's work. Later on, as I got older and stronger, I started fishing for swordfish on the Grand Banks and tuna in Venezuela with my mentor, Larry Thompson, who ironically ran the Sea Lion for Bob Applenapp on Walker's Cay back in the day. From him, I learned lessons of oceanography, pelagic fish behavior, seamanship, watch standing, and the mental toughness that comes from taking 30-day trips into the middle of the ocean commercial fishing. That was the perspective I brought with me to the Pacific Northwest and on to Alaska. My first years there were spent longlining for halibut and sablefish. At the time,
It was a brutal endeavor, which 5 men would catch upwards of 100,000 pounds of fish in a 3-day opener, where using set lines where we'd fish around the clock and get no sleep. I quickly realized that there must be an easier way to make a living. So I got my captain's license and started operating research vessels that took me along every bit of coastline from Ketchikan to Barrow and up beyond the Arctic Circle to the North Pole. So I got to check out the whole state for a couple of years before I decided that I wanted to settle there. I settled in Seward, which is kind of halfway between Prince William Sound and Kodiak. It's been my home since 1995. I met my wife immediately upon arriving in the state because she was the one that hired me to operate the research vessel that was run by the University of Alaska. And even though she's not here today, I want to take this moment to, say that my wife really has stood by my side and sacrificed much to support my life as a fisherman. I'm sure everyone in this room is, thanks. I'm sure everyone in this room who's a fisherman has put fishing first more times than they care to admit, and I'm no different. I'm trying not to do that quite as much anymore, but still in my 26 years of Alaskan summer season, all I do is fish every day, and she accepts that with the grace that defines what a fine person she is. Just sorry she can't be here. I think what every one of us have in common is that we all have pushed ourselves and our crews towards excellence. Sometimes that can be painful. Sometimes it can be incredibly rewarding. For me, I had 2 crew members that ran my deck for 18 of those years, Danny Candelaria and Jeff Seward, and they really made it possible for me to have the confidence to explore new fishing grounds and manage the chaos of a wide open bite of big fish, and really help me elevate sport fishing in Alaska to the standards that you all keep here and in other places along the coast. I think they both are so good that they would have flourished on any boat in any fishery anywhere, and it's too bad that none of you could have had them helping you out because they were amazing. My fishing partners over the years, Steve Zernia, Terry Mangold, and Nick Ronta, helped me in immeasurable ways to put the pieces of the puzzle together much better than I would have alone. I'll say it now that I won several big tournaments as a direct result of fishing intel that they gave me and didn't act on, and I did. And I think it says a lot about our long friendship and partnership that they were willing to do that. Largely because I've always moved between sport and commercial fishing. As you could see from the picture, I was longlining tuna in the Hudson Canyon when I was a young boy. So I moved back and forth between sport and commercial fishing, and I continue to do so to this day. And because of that, I've been able to work as an effective advocate for all Alaskan fishermen. Federal fisheries management can be a nasty business, and it really only works when there are active fishermen involved, ones that remember the struggles and challenges of fishing for their survival and remember what it's like to have a sore back when you wake up in the morning. Currently, I'm the only active fisherman serving on the North Pacific Fishery Management Council, and I'm hopeful that when I leave, I'll be replaced by another one. Having spent the last decade learning the fishery in Kona and the Big Island of Hawaii has been one of the most satisfying fishing experiences that I've ever had in all my years, mostly because it's never been about catching fish for money there for me. It's just been about the joy of fishing in the blue water. And the local sport fishing captains and crews and the small boat commercial skiff fishermen have been great about helping me learn the fishery very slowly, one little hint at a time. But over the course of the last 10 years, I've put the pieces together, and now I can go out and catch fish like they do. It's a very hard place to catch fish. I hope to welcome some of those great captains when their time comes to receive this award. There are more than a few deserving captains fishing out of Kona right now. I'm 58 years old. I have 2 more years of fisheries management, and I will leave that behind when I'm termed out on the council. But I'm far from done fishing. I'll be chasing king salmon in Alaska and ahis and onos on the Big Island and helping the next generation of young fishermen see the sport for what it is, which after all these years is pretty much what Flip Pallet did for me. I want to thank the IGFA for making me feel welcome as a member since I was a boy, for the legendary Captains Committee for recognizing my efforts and catches in the fisheries I participate in, my wife, my friends, my loyal clients, and my great sponsors, Mercury Marine, Pure Fishing, AFCO, Nomad Tackle, and Simrad for keeping me on the cutting edge of this great sport. Thank you all for letting me speak.
Congrats, man. You deserve it so much.
Let's get a picture of the
Oh. So, our next honoree, Captain Skip Smith. That's the reason I'm up here tonight. And hearing the OP story, Skip, reminded me that all the things that you've done, I don't think most people know that you also inspired a clothing line, the Swing Easy shorts. Some of you don't know, Skip used to wear short shorts, and apparently it was a little offensive when you looked up on the bridge when he was yelling at you. So in order to contain his gear, they had to make some longer shorts because staring up at the boys from the cockpit was not good.
We're talking about Skip Smith. And I really led a blessed life. Really had a lot of great crew members, great clients, and great friends. But everybody needs idols in their lives. And I have to tell you that my brother, by another mother, might have been the same father, being as how we're both Smiths, but Skip has always been my idol. Now, Skip and I went opposite directions. Skip put his life on the line and went over the world, and I put my life on the line and went to the Inlet. Now, they're similar. But when I look at the things that Skip's done for me, he has opened my eyes to all the great fisheries of the world, whether it was Fort Lauderdale, the west side of Central America, Australia, cruising across the middle of the ocean, listening to his adventures and stuff. He's always been the man living the life that I wished I was living, except for the fact that I had the greatest wife and son in the world. So I was in pretty good shape anyway. And as we get further along, I have to tell you a little brief history here. I got lucky. I had a fantastic client in Marty Arostegui, and we were both learning about nighttime sword fishing. And when I took him sword fishing to catch his son to swordfish, he says, I think we could do that on fly. And the next time he went, he brought the fly rod and never put it in the water. And then the next time he went, we caught one. And then I had the honor of fishing a few other people who tried to catch a swordfish on fly, drifting the night to no avail. And then my idol, Skip Smith, started perfecting nighttime trolling for swordfish and bait and switch. So from the nighttime sword fishing, trolling, and bait and switch, which Skip had pretty much perfected, I managed to indulge him in alcohol one day, and he gave me, well, I tricked him into giving me a couple of tips on bait and switch. And then I had the pleasure of several trips with Rufus Wakeman as we tried to catch swordfish on fly, bait, and switch. And we had some pretty good shots. But as the story goes along, I met a man tonight who mentioned that Marty Arostegui was the only man to catch a IGFA Royal Slam on fly. And I said, no, you're wrong. Skip Smith told me how to bait and switch for swordfish. I showed Rufus Wakeman how I was bait and switching for swordfish. And Roy Croniker, one of the most eminent people in fishing today, has 3 Royal Slams on fly. So just setting the record straight on who's been coming up here handing out awards now and then. Roy, we owe Skip Smith a lot because he really got the ball rolling on bait and switch sword fishing. Another place that Skip has taught me a lot about life is in family, because Skip and I go back a long ways, and over the years I fished next to his sister and his brother and his father and watched Skip lead his family through trials and tribulations, and he has truly been the leader of getting his family through times good and bad. And it's just another reason I've always been inspired by Skip Smith. And then today, you can take a bow, Skip, you've earned it. And then today, when other guys are saying, myself included, you know, maybe it's time to retire. Of course, then again, I am a lot older than Skip. I am his big brother. And I do mean big, maybe not tall, but big. But here he is at a time in his life when he should be kicking back and saying, okay, what does the world owe me? Now he's regenerating the economy and the fishery popularity of the Bahama Islands with a series of hugely successful tournaments. And there's two more places Skip's influenced my life. He wrote a book that inspired me to get less lazy and do a book myself. Pat, are you in the room, Pat Mansell? Stand up, please. I have a recording app on my phone, and I ramble on, and I go back and start over again, and I misspell the names. And that poor guy, Pat Mansell, all because of Skip, has to turn my gibberish into the English language to produce some books that by no means compare to Skip's books. Well, what goes around comes around. And Skip and I have that situation. I met Skip, I think it was 1973, it might have been 1972. And at that point, I would be an older man, and he was a smart-ass kid. And I had moved from fishing at the Castaways in Miami up to the BMR. And we kept putting up this stupid kite thing and putting sailfish and hammerhead sharks on the dock. And this smart-ass kid kept coming down and bugging me every day. He wanted to know how to rig the kite, how to rig the rods, how to adjust the kite, how deep to fish, what to use. Gee, he was such a pain. But he paid every day because he wore a straw hat. And every day when he came down to my boat, believe it or not, I was agile enough back then to do a Mexican hat dance on his straw hat every day. So without further ado, I'm going to ask Skip to come up here for a minute, because I want to see if it's true what has happened to him. I heard a rumor that all of his skills and accolades have given him a fat head. So I want to see if it's true. Yeah, it doesn't fit him very good. Thank you. Thank you. I can't.
Now it'll
Yep.
fit.
Thank you for a lifetime of inspiration. You look really, really good. I'll give it back to you and Carl.
That was more like the Miami Stomp. All right. The next victim to come up and talk about our good buddy Skip is a guy who, the two of these guys changed the way we fish. And if you remember back in the day when these guys were going at it, it was an incredible thing to watch. It was an incredible thing to learn from, be a part of, and study. And they volleyed back and forth a little bit, but without question, two of the best we've ever seen in this business, Captain Bart Garnsey.
this is a tough act to follow right there, I'll tell you. I got to go back a little bit. I've been around a long time. It's funny how your life catches up with you and you think about lessons that you missed. And one of the reasons that I'm here is that my second year in college, I was taking French and biology and a lot of stuff. Of course, I immediately went from 19, 20 points right down to about 11, and then Uncle Sam decided I needed to go to work for him. And what I learned there was don't ever volunteer for anything. And that's why I didn't learn much, because I'm up here, and I haven't figured out why. But I am here for Skip. It's a privilege. When they asked me to get up here and say a few words, I don't live here in South Florida anymore, and so I started thinking about it, and I started calling all the people that I knew that knew Skip, and I asked them, I said, just, you know, I'm going to get up here in front of all these folks, and I want to have a list of, you know, really nice things that you like about Skip and what a wonderful guy is and the whole thing. And so I had a big notebook of a huge bunch of pages, and I started writing down whenever somebody said something really nice about him. And I have it here in my pocket. There it is right there. And the ink must have dried, I'm sorry. Skip and I shared one thing in common when we were kids. We both grew up in the drift fishing business. And I think that always kind of put a little chip on our shoulders, because we were dirty fighters, you know. We kind of stuck at it a little bit. But one thing that really impressed me about Skip, early on, we'll go back a little bit, I worked for a gentleman named Mr. Stuart Campbell. And for years that we fished together, 30-some years, I kept telling him, you need to get involved in the IGFA. You need to get involved in it. You need to, and just become part of it. And he didn't understand that. He hated it. He wasn't a joiner. He didn't want to do it. And he kept asking me why. And I said, because you need to put something back into what you did. You know, you've become kind of a notable guy in the business. And I said, just go ahead and get involved. Well, he finally did, and he loved it. And he appreciated what he did. As a crew member all my life, no one has put as much back into the IGFA as Skip Smith. And so even though I got volunteered for this job, it's been a really privilege to do this, and it's been a privilege to know Skip all these years.
Is Scotty Levin still here? Did he leave? That dog. So Skip's had a few deckhands in his day, and Scott was one of the guys that was able to be with him on the Madam and Hooker, go across the Pacific, and do all kinds of really cool stuff. So Scott's got some dirt. He's got some dirt. There were some bad boys on the old Hooker and the Madam. Anyway, here's Scott.
Thank you, Carl. I just want to say what an honor and a pleasure it is to be up here for probably the most incredible, one of the most, besides my father, the most incredible man in my life, and that's Skip. We all know what an innovator and a pioneer he was, and but most of all, to me, he was the key to my success in my career, in not only fishing, but doing what I do in brokerage today. Getting to meet all of the people around the world, and he taught me so much about life. As a young kid coming out of college, I didn't know what I wanted to do, and I picked up the phone one day and had the balls to call Miss Deborah Dunaway's husband, and I didn't think he was going to answer the phone, and asked him for a job. They had no idea who I was, and I didn't know where I was going to go or what I was going to do, but all I knew was that I wanted to go fishing. And this was a perfect opportunity, and I probably had zero chance of ever working on this boat. And after Jerry picked up the phone, I didn't even know what to say. I was so nervous. And I said, I'm just some young kid in Florida that wants to go fishing around the world. And he said, will you go meet my captain, Skip, and if he likes you, you're hired. And so a couple weeks later, I went and met Skip and had lunch with him, and off we went. And he introduced me to so many people around the world. He was always there for us. He taught us so much, from everything from in light tackle to heavy tackle. He spent every waking moment of the day trying to patiently teach us everything he knew, and he did. He was always the first person to share everything that we learned and did and experienced, no matter where we went in the world. Everywhere we went, we made friends, and we traded stories and experiences and how everybody, you know, learned new things. And he always was giving to everyone, like he is now, and continues to go on and just amaze us all, and his love that he puts back into this sport. And there are so many stories, and so many of them are really bad, and you've probably read quite a few of them in his book. So I'm not going to get into all of the raunchy bad things, but he taught me so many lessons in life. If it wasn't for some of the stuff that he taught me, I wouldn't be standing here, you know. He ran over me at 17 knots in reverse while trying to hang on to a 600-pound blue marlin on 6-pound test. But he at least taught me enough to take 2 wraps, hold on for dear life, and don't let go until you were deep enough that the boat passed over you. And that's, in fact, what he did. He taught me how to flip a 17 Mako in the surf of Costa Rica, while Deborah and Jerry were fighting over who was going to catch a world record roosterfish on 2-pound. And we managed to come out of that alive and even save the boat. But I will have to say one of his favorite stories, and I guess his one way that he felt like, I guess he really got back to me for torturing him all those years as a young, you know, Greene kid not knowing much about fishing. Real quick, we were in Kona, Hawaii, and we were anchored up in the bay of Kailua. And it was one of our few off days, because we fished about 350 days a year. And between, you know, a month or 2 of charters, we had a day off to clean the boat and wax and everything. And it was one of those burning hot days where it was just, you know, sweating my ass off. And decided to jump in the water to cool off. Well, I didn't look in the water, but the bay happened to be full of like all these little baby man-o-wars. And when I jumped in the water, I felt this tingling sensation, and I thought I was cooling off. And Skip had gone inside. I don't know what he was doing. But I came to the surface, and I felt all this stuff draping on my face, and it started burning me. And I looked down, and I realized that I was just covered in these man-o-wars. And so I jumped up on the boat, and I didn't know what to do, and I was screaming for Skip. I'm like, Skip, Skip. And I, you know, couldn't find him, and I'm calling in the salon, and he comes running out, and he's like, what's wrong, what's wrong? And I go, man, I got all these jellyfish, I'm burning, I don't know what to do. I think you're in. He's like, oh, here, definitely. And he pulls his pants down, and he's like, this is my chance to pee on you. And so that's what he did. He proceeded to pee on me. It was fantastic. So, but that was humiliating. But to this day, I want to tell you that he is my greatest mentor, and it is such an honor to be up here. He introduced me to pretty much all of these incredibly legendary great captains and owners in this room. And if it wasn't for him, I wouldn't be here. So for that, I want to say I love you, Skip.
I'm pretty sure that wasn't the only tingling sensation to ever happen on the Madam and the Hooker. I'm just saying. Anyway, it's your turn, buddy. Cap Skip, come on up here.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Boys, it's fun peeing on your favorite deckhand, I can tell you that. First of all, I want to thank everybody for coming here, supporting this event. It's turned out to be such a great event, and especially to honor the people that we've been able to honor over the last 11 years. Bouncer, thank you for the great introduction and all the love over the years. Thank you so much. Congratulations, Ben. You had a great career, great run. The Roger Greene family, I'd like to talk to you a little bit afterwards. I knew your dad. He was super. I fished next to him. Archie used to come down and bust my chops all the time. And Roger was pulling drags and working on tackle. With Archie's Invader, you can see them coming all the time. Peter, I owe you one. Glad you remember your sat nav and you got to fix every 6 hours, and thanks for the insurance plug. Andy, someday I'll go to Alaska. I got close one time, or maybe Kona. I don't know. I promised my wife a trip to Kona on our way to Australia someday soon. Tony, I hope you can follow this act, but I remember when you were here for OMI, and that was one of the best award sessions we ever had. Your OMI was awesome. Between praying, he got up here and started praying, and we had a revival that night. That was so cool with OMI here. I think OMI was one of the first, but that was a really special night. So congratulations to my fellow recipients tonight. It's such an honor to be included in you. There's so many crews over the years that have led the way for us. The reason I brought this book up here is this is kind of what led me to going to the places that we first started going. We didn't have the frickin' internet or that crap back then. But, you know, page through here, Black Marlin, Panama, you know, just the places to go and the people to see, the people we met rather. But this was like the Bible back then. That and the IGFA reps. It was so special to be able to get that information back in those days. But then there was like the Hemingway crew and the Zane Grey and the learners, the expeditions they put on many years before us. We've had some great leaders in our business. And a lot of it comes down to the captains and crews. Like Bark says, you know, a lot of owners get into it and the crews are teaching them IGFA rules, and then the owners realize what the IGFA does for all of us, and we all join and try to support them and follow their damn rules. Which I got to be pretty good at with all the records we caught. I had to disqualify 2 of my favorite records. My mom caught them. She got DQ'd twice because the mate handed her the damn rod. One of my favorite stories with my parents on the boat. For some reason, I had a brother named Kunta, white guy. And we're fishing Cozumel one day, and we run over to the edge, and on the way over, my Kunta fires up a joint and smokes it on the way over, and puts the baits out, and he smokes another joint. My mom liked to have a beer on ice. So about 10 in the morning, she goes, Kunta, get me a beer. Mom, it's only 10 o'clock. Kunta, you smoked 2 spliffs. Now get me a friggin' beer. Then I had to disqualify her fish. So in thinking about how much time I might have up here to talk, I decided I was going to use the formula to find out how much a blue marlin weighs. You take the GER squared times the short length. So I figured Chip Schaefer talked about 45 minutes. Gary Stuve talked about 45 minutes. So you GER squared, okay. Now the short length. I'll use Bubba Carter. Bubba Carter had the shortest talk, it was about 30 seconds. He said, thank you, thank you, thank you. He was very humble. So if I divide all that by 800, girth squared divided by short length 100 gives me about 25 minutes. But I don't think I use that much time. So luckily, I never wanted to be a Heisinger. I never wanted to be rich. I just wanted to be able to fish, support my bad habits, pay my rent. $15 a half day bouncer is what we got paid. $5 tip. Good days back in those days. It was a money-making deal. Amount of sailfish, we got 20. Eddie, you still owe me some money, I think, from back in '78. I got my logbook up here. Who would believe that being a deckhand on a drift boat would lead you to this? I got the bait hooks, clean up people's puke. It was so much fun on the head boat. I couldn't catch a kingfish on 40-pound tests. Then I ended up catching blue marlin on 8-pound, for gosh sakes. Barkey and Obie, they started their, Obie O'Brien, he got the award last year there. They all started theirs on a drift boat, so there's got to be something about working on a drift boat that turns you over to the charter dock with all the glamour over there. So I was lucky to work on the charter dock for a few years next to Bouncer and some other guys, and you just never know where life's going to take you. Over the years, we've met some really great people in this business, from other captains, owners, crews. You just don't know who you're going to meet next. And then to be able to travel. One of our secrets to the Madam and Hooker operation was the IGFA. When we put the tour together, it's like, where in the hell do we go? Who do we talk to? Well, I had my book, but it didn't quite do everything. So the IGFA let us get in touch with a lot of representatives. And when we'd get to a country, we would have the IGFA rep come down to the boat. They knew all the customs guys, so it made it a little easier clearing customs and everything else. And it was really special. They told us kind of where they caught them over the years, so it kind of helped. When I went fishing back then, there was no GPS. I had a chart stuck in my shorts, my swing easies, Deborah, and my radar. And we'd sit there and try to figure out where to fish, and sometimes I'd go exploring and try to find some other areas. And so it was really special to have IGFA really help us over the years. I don't even want to mention all the teachers I had over the years, all the great captains I worked for. I worked for one captain there, and he taught me how to fix everything from the head pump to electric problems and stuff like that. And to me, that was more important than about anything else. My goal in the middle of my career was to really not to be the best fisherman, to catch the most. It was to keep the boat running every day so I could fish every day. That was my goal. So in the 1979, I met Jerry Dunaway in Texas. And he actually offered me a job. They were drinking that night and smoking. And he offered me a job, and he said, oh, we're going to go to St. Thomas in January, and we're going to go here. And I mean, man, you got all the months wrong. I ain't working for you. So I bailed. And Jeff A. took the job, and my famous brother, Kunta, who I kind of wrote a book about, all the good parts anyhow, the sex and drugs. But anyhow, they took the job, went down to Belize, and I got a pretty severe injury, longlining, and so I went down there to help them bring the boat back, and I ended up being able to work for Mr. Dunaway for 11 years. And yeah, I was Kunta's second mate. What a great job that was. So anyhow, after a good start like that, we had 3 hookers over the years. The 53 lasted a couple years, and we went to Panama and anchored off Coiba and had some great fishing down there, and Hannibal Bank, whatever you want to call it. They were biting back then. We needed a bigger boat, and Jerry bought us a 60, and then he sold the boat with the business. So then we built the hooker, the 48 GNS. And you wouldn't believe what a hooker did for me all those years. It was really great. Some of the things she did for me, she made me last a long time. She was really good. She gave me lots of good ideas. She took care of me when we were gone for a long time. Some days she was rough on me, some days she was nice to me. We didn't keep her tied up too much. She was always on the go. She made me plenty of money. She liked to catch big ones. She was great at entertaining the guests. Like most hookers, she wasn't faithful. But I could count on her when times got tough. Unlike some other people had to silence their hookers, Stormy Daniels, a few names up here in Palm Beach. I never had to pay mine to stay quiet, though. I was lucky. So it was a great run. So many great people to fish. And then one day, Jerry broke up with his girlfriend, and he brought down a new girl down to the boat, and he brought a friend of his down there with him, and he brought a date. They went out and partied a little too much that night. So Deborah's girlfriend was hungover, his buddy was hungover, but the girl he brought along was really interested in fishing. So Jerry started talking to her about fishing and told Dougie Haig, one of my deckhands, to get her phone number. And when a blue marlin would come up, this lady would scream. Right, Deborah? Deborah Dunaway? That's one special angler. So she ditched her date, hooked up with Dunaway, and she ended up being the best fisherman in the world. She held a world record in every billfish category at one time. We were lucky enough to set quite a few world records with Jerry and Deborah, and then further with Dick and Marg. Some of my favorite records with Jerry, Marg's 4-pound record, and one of the special ones with Craig's, Hunter Craig and his wife Michelle. She caught a swordfish out here on 8-pound. It was really cool because her husband got to wire it, the son got to gaff it, and I got to jump up and down celebrating one hell of a good record. That was so cool for the family. Where was I? Then my whole life changed. I went to work for Dick Love and started in the insurance business a little bit. We built a GNS that backed down way too fast where I almost chopped Scotty up in the wheels. Very popular story recently, unfortunately. And I got to merge my little agency with a guy named Roy Merritt, and my whole life changed. Thank you, Roy, for everything. Then Steve Roy and Roy Merritt decided they're going to start a tournament called the Custom Shootout. And it's sort of like when you're in the Keys, you're fishing, you know, and you got your baits out and the birds are attacking you, and you pull up next to another boat and you stop and you let the birds go over the other boat. They brought the tournament upstairs. Skip, we need your help. This will be our 20th year giving back through a charity. So thanks for Roy for bringing the seagulls over to my boat. My prior career, I had a very selective memory in my book, and I'm not going to throw myself under the bus again. But I was lucky. I got to run a drift boat, got to run the Jungle Queen. That was everybody's worst nightmare going up the river. A couple of Hatteras, a Bertram, GNS boat, 110 supply boat. Never got to run a Merritt or Robovich. I mean, I'm kind of a sheltered kid. But anyhow, I was able to visit a lot of different countries. So to my kids, all my kids are here. I wish I could do it all over again, take you guys around the world. That was some fun we had. My adopted kids, Casey and Paul and Maddie, thanks for everything you do in my life. My wife, she bought me a hooker a few years ago, you know. Yeah, it was a 48 GNS, the same one. So, and ending, here's to my brother Kunta. He was special. Thank you, everyone.
Great stuff, brother. Fucking awesome job, man. So stoked for you. Captain Tony Tillett. Couldn't be a better person to introduce you than our good buddy, Captain Charles C.P. Perry. Come on up here, buddy.
This is something I'd like to read that was written only a few weeks ago. This is about those IGFA folks. It's about time they realize that there's more Tilletts than just Omi. This was written by Laura Boswick, and she passed away. Most people here know Laura. She passed away, and she knew she was going to pass away, but she knew Tony was going to get this award. And she wrote this to his wife before she passed away. I thought it was pretty strong. I wanted to start off with that. But I got another story to tell you, and you might have read in the book that Captain Tony started in this industry when he was 12 years old. And he came down to the dock one morning because he was mating for his father. And we discussed this. We're not real sure what was happening with Sambo, but he decided he wasn't going to go fishing that day. And he said, Tony, you go ahead and take the charter. And Tony said, okay, Dad. And Tony went offshore on his first trip when he was 12 years old. And he said that he had a group that they were of the Oriental descent, and he didn't quite understand them real well, but he could hear them keep mumbling all day, where's the captain? Where's the captain? And the mate on the boat was the same age he was. Now, obviously, they went and caught fish, but they were out there by themselves. And he went offshore 30 miles with a compass and a clock, and that's what you had in those times. You had a pocket watch or a watch, and you drove your distance and time. And distance and time off Oregon Inlet, that's tough even today. But it was real tough then. We're talking 60-some years ago. So Tony was real special in that he has done so much through his career for so many people in the area of where he fished mostly. He's fished some other places, but his main area was the Oregon Inlet area and Hatteras and Oregon Inlet. And he's been a mentor for me all my life. He's been very special in my life, but he's been a mentor for a lot of the people that are there. He's put a lot of has had a lot of really good mates, and they have turned into great captains. And it's kind of one of those things where you always hear about Captain Omi, his brother. And yes, Captain Omi was special too, but Tony should never be forgotten. They were like two twins, and they were both very important. They set a standard, I feel like, at Oregon Inlet that is what is still respected and lived by today. It was a moral standard that these young mates and captains, none of them really stepped out of line. They had to fish hard and work hard to do what they did in that location. And they set a standard that's still there today. And Tony's still fishing today. And it's really a special place. I've been very fortunate to be able to travel and fish a lot of different places in the world that are really hot spots, I consider. And I still get calls today, and they'll ask me, can you get me an Oregon Inlet mate? And I had one just a couple of weeks ago. And I think that says what the Oregon Inlet place is like, and it's like that because of people like Captain Omi and Captain Tony. They set a standard that was hard to be repeated anywhere, I think. So, and with that, I'm going to invite Captain Kenneth Brown up here. He's got a few words to say about Tony, and I'm sure they'll be much better than mine.
What a wonderful opportunity and privilege it is for me to be here tonight to say a few words about Captain Tony. I'd like to start by saying thank you, Captain Tony, for myself and all the generations of fishermen along the way. You have created a path for us to follow. You have led us out the channel, across the bar, into the ocean, and home for a lifetime, and set a level of excellence that we all hope to achieve but none of us ever will. Honestly, when Charles first asked me to speak, my head was spinning. How do you tell a story that started in the 50s and continues in the year 2022? I decided to go with one in hopes you will understand a little more about the man behind the accomplishments and not just the accomplishments. Captain Tony has always led by example and is not a self-promoter, a quality that I have tried to pass along to my boys over the years. He just shows you if you're paying attention. My story started when my dad was 10 years old and his family moved to Manteo, North Carolina. The very first person he met was Captain Tony Tillett. At that moment in time, I was adopted into one of the greatest family of fishermen there has ever been. My relationship with Captain Tony began in my late 20s. I was out of college, married, with my first child on the way, and standing on the stern of the Carolinian as the first mate. The end of the road at Oregon Inlet. Captain Tony is a finisher, and if you look at most of the people that work for him, they moved on to captain boats, build boats, or travel the world when they were done. The list is long. It was the spring of the year, and we were tied up in the ditch that's now Spencer's, getting ready for the coming season. Captain Tony was replacing his 1271 with a 3412, staying in front and leading the way as he always did. We were in the engine room sanding, painting, and adding wood. Captain Brian Whitaker had bought his new release and was tied up behind us. He was replacing his motor with the 1271 Tony was taking out and had his old boat for sale. Right in the middle of everything, Captain Tony looks at me and said, "You know, that man owns 2 boats and 3 motors. You might ought to go talk to him." So one night after work, he drove me to Hatteras and we went through the boat together. I made an agreement with Rom and brought it back to Hatteras to get her ready for the coming season. Captain Tony would talk to me every morning, he would talk to me every evening, and he stopped what he was doing in the middle of his repower several times to get my boat ready. Then he took me to his barn and he handed me 8 fishing poles to get started. They had 7 different boat names: the Carolinian, the Sportsman, the Temptation, no pressure at all. Who tells their mate to go buy a boat with their motor on the bank and the start of the season a month away? Well, Captain Tony, I was on my way. Fast forward 20 years and I had lost a transmission. I needed a tow to Wanchese, and of course I look up to see Captain Tony passing me a rope. As we started the trip, I was sitting in my helm's chair with the center curtain open like a picture frame. All I could see was Captain Tony standing on the bridge of his Warren O'Neill boat and the word Carolinian written across the stern in big letters. Yep, he's still got me. He's still leading the way. We get to Wanchese and he throws the ropes off of her and is gone without saying a word. That was classic Captain Tony. I called him and I asked him, "How much do I owe you?" And he replied, $1 million. I could hear the smile in his voice. Well, Captain Tony, standing here today, $1 million would not touch it. Thank you. We love you. And I know Captain Omi is smiling on his brother tonight.
Captain Tony, love to have you come on up here and accept your Tommy Gifford Award.
Thank you. I'm really not built for this. You don't know how scared I am of just getting to say something. But anyway, first of all, I would like to thank the committee for the work that they do to get everybody to come to this celebration. And then second, I want everybody to take notice of the ladies. How good they look tonight, the way they dress and everything. That's good. I don't know where to start, to tell you the truth. Just seems like everybody has covered everything, but
I sort of got something in the back of my mind that I like to tell you about myself, which, you know, you've heard most of the story, so. But I got one captain that gives me a hard way to go, which he used to work with me, and I'm going to tell you his name. His name's going to be Bull Tolson on the Sea Toy. And when we were together as a team, I told him, I says, go down and rig us up a double hook squid for a blue marlin. Well, up came the blue marlin on that bait, but I had a special pole where I told him I wanted it. So when that marlin come up on heads and shoulders, I reached down and picked that pole up, and I could see Bull down there reaching for that rod, for the rod. You know, he couldn't figure out where that pole went. But anyway, I dropped back to the fish, and I hollered down to the people. I said, who wants to mine a fish? Well, the bottom line was the hook came off, or the fish came off the hook, and we pulled it in. There was no string on the hooks. There was no hooks on the thing, no squid. I know how the fish got off. But I told Bull, you know, I said, Bull, don't worry. He was missed by the best. But anyway, overall, my brother, which he gets a lot of everything is truth about him, he paved the road for me. I followed his footsteps, and what else can I say? I made plenty of wrong turns through my fishing career. I wish I could take them back and go back another 70 years and start over, but but it's not going to happen. I know that. My poor legs and everything's giving out, you know. So when you turn 80, there's not much to look forward to. But I'm sorry. Everything is, you know, I just can't think how much further to go with my trying to speak. So anyway, I want to thank everybody. And
outstanding. Tony, that was great. Yes, sir. You did great. Congratulations, man. I want to get your trophy.
Okay.
Outstanding stuff. I know for our committee, we want to thank you all very much for coming. We want to thank our sponsors that helped us out, Dave Boltice, Tim Choate, Northern Lights, the Greene family, of course, the Tilletts. Incredible stuff. Thank you very, very much for coming. Congrats to all the inductees, and we hope to see you here the next time we put on this shindig. Thank you all very much.